Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. We can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday. And for some reason, the microphone doesn't sound loud enough to me, but I think we're okay. So, but we should have the music, huh? Yes. There we go. All right, guys. Well, welcome, Rocks. So we are still in the. Oh, it's Monday, not Tuesday. Does it say Tuesday? I'm so. Wait. It's the 12th. Oh, did I say it was Tuesday? Yeah, we don't put that in the title. Yeah, it's Monday. What I meant to say was, it's the beginning of the week. Shall we come over here and start things, actually, by looking at the schedule for this week? What do we got? Ooh, 10-year auction today. Well, that's interesting. This week. Thank you, Malware Bites. Wait, why is that showing up now? Oh, that's weird. Lots of Fed news. Well, let's see here. So we got FOMC member Williams speaking, core CPI tomorrow, PPI on Wednesday, and Thursday, of course, the usual unemployment claims, Empire State Manufacturing Index, Philly Fed Manufacturing Index, import prices, bunch of Fed speakers, and Friday, the rare but not unorthodox No News Friday. Those are always the trickiest for me. No News Friday. So yes, we got an inflation week coming up here. Plus, I don't know if maybe Rox is talking about the news story coming out last night that the Fed has been subpoenaed. That's not what I read. What I read was that they were doing a grand jury. Come on, where is it? Oh, Central Bank had been served grand jury subpoenas from the Justice Department threatening a criminal indictment in what Bloomberg said was a dramatic escalation of the Trump administration's attacks on the Fed. You want to talk about this first? Let's talk about this first, because I don't think that we got anything like too big going on here in the market. So we're in a kind of an interesting situation here on this, which is where, based on my rules about how to analyze things and so forth, I really have no choice but to just defer to Donald Trump's expertise. Like, the thing is, they have definitely been putting political pressure on the Federal Reserve, and I don't like that. Not that it would really accomplish anything, because it is a board and they make their decisions based on the economic conditions. It's totally okay for the president to say, I think that interest rates should be lower. Okay, this is what I do every day. I love to speculate about whether the current interest rate policy is appropriate or not, and argue with them when I think that it's wrong. Okay, so that's totally okay. But there really seems to be this flavor of, well, you should do what I want or else sort of a thing with the Federal Reserve. And criminally indicting Jerome Powell seems to be a part of that campaign. Okay. But if you look at like the timing of this and everything, like it wouldn't make sense for this story to come out now. This has been in process for a while. Basically, during that time when Donald Trump like toured, right? When he toured the renovations and everything like that, it seems that he immediately went back and told the Justice Department to investigate. And now they're to the point where they want to do a grand jury. You know? Now, here's the thing. This is a case where I think that the news will try and get you super upset about something. And if you really know what's going on, you realize that it's not as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. Like, look, that's the way that the process works is you go and if you think that you've got something, then you go to a grand jury. And a grand jury is like a jury of people that know what they're talking about, essentially. It's like lawyers and other judges and stuff, okay? So they go to all these lawyers and judges and everything and say, we have an indictment here, and here's what we think. And then that jury determines if that indictment is fair or not. So if these are really baseless accusations, then the grand jury will turn it down. And if there's something there, then they will get the grand jury indictment. And look, I've never renovated an historic building before. I've never been, managed a project like that. I don't think that Jerome Powell has either, but not before this, at least. And that's kind of the problem, is I really feel that Jerome Powell, he knew his stuff, and when it comes to the economic policy, and he is a total wonk. And I think once he got comfortable getting up there on the stage and talking, he did a pretty good job at that part. Even though I do think that under his tutelage, is that the correct word to use? Anyways, that the Federal Reserve has made a lot of mistakes. Okay. But he didn't have any like really serious executive experience outside of just being a member of the board. If you were to go to like just the person that had the most experience in the Federal Reserve, you would have gone with the president of the New York Fed. You would have gone with Williams. That maybe Donnie made a mistake there. A mistake that I think he's probably going to make again here. Not that I have anything against the people that are like at the top of the list, but are they really the most experienced executive with central bank policy experience? I don't think so. But Donald Trump has a lot of executive experience, especially when it pertains to building things. So if anybody would know if the amount of time and money that has gone into that renovation is appropriate or not, it would be Donald Trump. So even though I'm kind of like, I don't like this, I don't know anything about it. He does. So what am I going to do? So it's an interesting story, but hopefully nothing too big to worry about. Anyways, and the next thing that we should do is we should pull up TradingView and kind of take a higher level view. We could do it over here on our VPS, but I just don't have the screens set up for it. So I do it here. So you can see that in the overnight, well, the treasuries were a little lower on Friday, and now they're a little bit lower today. Is it concerning? Is our concerning levels? Actually, let's go to like a 30-minute chart so we can see even more. Well, I would say that we're getting there. I mean, these would be like really, really concerning levels. Given that it's just kind of been like a slow burn down, and are not really seeing anybody talking about interest rates or like freaking out about it, this is a little concerning to me. We're getting to those, but in terms of like trading, that maybe that's a signal that now's a good time to buy for a swing long. I don't know. Fundamentally, I don't see any reason to swing long, but fundamentally, I don't really see a reason for it to be like crashing out either. So S&P 500, well, the S&P did pretty okay on Friday and then has come back. I mean, really, Friday was all about that non-farms payroll number, and it was kind of like a Goldilocks number. It wasn't terrible, but it was just bad enough. So I don't know if it changed the trajectory of things. Federal Reserve is still likely to cut 2 times in the later part of the year, which kind of sucks because that means that it's going to be like a slow burn. Things get slowly worse and worse and worse until we're forced to do it again in the fall. So that's, you know, it will be okay for most people, but I think it's unfortunate for the people that are struggling right now. It really is. It really is. Oil. Okay, well, we've had a little bit of a bounce here in oil, getting almost up to 60. And I'm thinking, has there been any... Well, the protests in Iran have gotten more serious. In fact, I'm starting to see rumors of that the United States would intervene because they've been shooting protesters. We have some circumstantial evidence of them mass shooting protesters. So some people are speculating that the West could get involved in that situation soon. We'll see. But in the meantime, you would think that would cause oil to go down, right? But it's not. They're up. Okay, gold. Well, so gold and silver have been crazy. Here's gold hitting a new high. Wow, and silver hitting a new high. It is anticipated that because of rebalancing activity, that gold and silver will probably see a decline this week. You'll probably, I wouldn't say that it's going to be like insane crazy selling, but I tell you what, man, if we're sitting here on Friday, sitting at new all-time highs on silver, that's going to be something else, because there were so many stories put out there and so much analysis about the amount of money that has to rebalance that would probably be selling in gold and silver. So it is very interesting. And maybe that is kind of bait. Like, hey, you pump it up just before they've got to sell it or something, right? But that is, that is wild. And lastly, I guess Bitcoin. No? Bitcoin, well, it looks like Bitcoin had a little bit of a pop over the weekend, but still ends up at about 90K. Which is, I guess, an okay place for them to be. Okay, Paul asks, do you know Future Trader 71, is he a reliable source to learn from? So, Futures Trader 1 is probably the longest running, most well-known and respected creator in the space, specifically around futures. I think that in terms of like the way that he tells you to trade, which is like you look at the volume profile, and based on these statistics that he has on the volume profile, you set up different scenarios about how the day is going to go, and then when you see one of them turning out, you take a trade based off of it. From everything that I've seen, both from like the empirical evidence that we have about the market, about how order flow actually works and all of those sorts of things, and how statistics tend to work in trading, and from just watching people learn from him and try it out, I don't think that there's really anything to it. I think that he does a good job of, telling you how to manage the risk and to actually approach trading and everything like that. So I really think that you kind of get to that bare minimum of management stuff to stand a chance. So I would probably bet that his traders probably last longer than your average trader. But like something that always kind of soured me was he says, well, here you take this many contracts, and then you take this one off here, and you take this one off here, and when you do that using that system alone helps you. And I was like, I don't think so. So I went and I did a little bit of statistics about it, like looking at each contract and the different scenarios of, that contract either goes to profit or loss and ran the statistics on it, and having the multiple contracts doesn't change the statistics at all. If you don't have an edge, it tends to converge towards break even. And I showed them the statistics and all of that, and he was like, well, but what we find is that our traders tend to be higher than that percentage. Well, the problem with that is probably seems like that up until the point that they blow out, right? So he's not considering the fat tails on the strategy. So yeah. And more broadly, I don't think that there is really anything to here was the yesterday's point of control and value area high and low and all of that sort of stuff, and based off of that you can make some sort of choice that will be better than random. if there was something to that and you were trading that, in order for that to really actually be effective, you would have to be swinging across all of the different instruments, essentially, right? You have to get a large enough sample size for those statistics to actually play out. And if you're a retail trader, just scalping one individual instrument, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. But then there's all sorts of biases in those numbers. I was also a little bothered that, like, one of the things that they kind of, you join their community and that you get is, like, the statistics and everything. But I have some tools that I've put out for free that not only give you all of those statistics that they talk about, like those specific ones, but provide an entire framework and show you the code for you to make up any kind of statistic that you want. And I take those and run them over, to like do long-term history, so that not only are you saying, like, what is the statistics, but okay, what happens if you actually trade this? And all of those backtests showed that it wasn't profitable. So I think more broadly for somebody, like this issue I have is that, like, well, I would, if he wanted to talk or do something together, I would 100% do it. Because I do like him. But, like in terms of I really never found another creator in the space that I really feel is like putting the content out that I would like to see from my standard. Well, I take that back. The Delta Trend guy, I forget his name, this kid with the curly hair. I think everything that he said is great. He doesn't necessarily focus on the things that I think would be most useful to you if you really insist on day trading, but all of the content that he puts out is really, really good. I would like to see more people in the day trading space talking about what's actually going on in the market. Do you think that the Federal Reserve should cut interest rates in March? What do you think that the inflation number is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday? These are the most valuable things for you to be talking about as a trader. That's where the most of edge available to us is. It's in being a speculator. And for some reason, everybody insists on being a technical trader, even though the resources available to you really aren't conducive to that. So, fair enough. Answers the question. Because I want to talk about the Minnesota thing. You want to talk about the Minnesota thing? By the way, Uzi here. When I want to talk about a politics thing like that, I want to hear what Uzi says about it. By the way, there was a lot of noise on the right about a right-wing creator kind of being assaulted at one of those protests. I wonder if there's anything more on that. I'm going to guess probably not, but... Black Brooklyn brownstone owners not down with calling home ownership a tool of white supremacy. So in New York, now that Mandami is in charge, he has this housing guru that he's put in charge of the housing, who is an absolutely crazed, deranged communist. And in their ideal world, the government assigns you housing. And if there's not enough housing for your family to have a house all to its own, you're just going to have to share it with other people, which is basically what happened in the Soviet Union. Is you'd have a nice house, and then they would say, actually, you don't need that house. We're going to give it to these other people that, you know, happen to be snitches for us and or family members of the local party chairman or things like that, right? Like that's, and here you have this person outright advocating for that system to come back and be practiced in New York. It's absolutely bonkers. And what's happening right now is New Yorkers are now kind of realizing what they gotten themselves into. She won't be able to implement what she wants, but they're just talking to her. And there's been some instances because her family is very, very rich. So reporters confronted her about it, and she was like, you know, the hypocrisy, and she was like in tears. So I have a theory for you. Should I call this a theory? I don't know if I should call it a theory, but here is how you combat leftists, in my opinion. Okay, here's Seth's strategy to combat leftists. And I'm just saying this is maybe a speculative strategy because I haven't really seen people do it too much. For me to say, you like, this has a history of success or something like that. But here's what I think you do. I think that you go after their inadequacies. You go after them personally. So, yeah, the courts will keep her constrained. Yeah, I mean, the things that she wants to do, they can't legally do. So, and the mayor definitely doesn't have the power to do them. But, you know, if they are promoting a policy and they, you know, if they're pushing DEI and they have privilege of their own that they're hiding from people, then you expose and confront them personally. You come to them and you say, well, except for that you have this super, super nice apartment. Why should you be allowed to have this super nice apartment? Right? Or your family has this and this and this. Why aren't you divesting yourself of your family's wealth? If it's somebody saying that, you know, we need to have more government services for migrants, then you say, well, you have a home, you could house some migrants. Why aren't you housing migrants? Right? And more so than that, you can look at these people. They really wear their life on their sleeve. Like everything about the way that they have their appearance and things like that, I think really shows a lot about their history in many cases. I think some people would say, well, that's not necessarily true. They could be like a absolute, you know, just look like the absolute crazed leftists and still be like a relatively successful person and things like that. But I bet you that if you go and you start attacking them for that, you just kind of, you look at them and you say, what's the stereotype of that person? And then start confronting them about it. They will either break down or blow up. You watch. You go and it's this kid, you know, these kids that are dressed in all black and are throwing firecrackers everywhere. Look, that was not a straight A student. I guarantee you, that was not a straight A student. Hey, maybe the reason that you're poor and you're struggling and everything isn't because the US hasn't done communism, but because you're a loser. Because you didn't work in school. You didn't do the things necessary to go and find a good career. It's really kind of bothersome to me, all of these people on the right that are just, you know, blue collar, not red collar workers, blue collar workers that have basically had their livelihoods completely destroyed for no fault of their own. People that are probably the hardest working people in America, and they get destroyed. And then you have these privileged kids going out to these protests every day and acting like complete absolute degenerates, claiming that they should be getting more. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. With this lady that was in the car, like, listen, here's my feelings about that. I think, like, how do you say, like, what are your feelings about it? Within what context? What hat are we putting on? Right? But the hat that I'm putting on is Seth. And here's the thing that stands out to Seth about this incident, okay? Is like, okay, she was in the car and she basically gunned the gas. I wouldn't say that it was pedal to the metal, but she accelerated so quickly that the car slipped on the ice. It's actually kind of curious. Maybe we can go into this one deeper later if you want. But if the conditions had been better, like if this had happened in the summer, she probably would have hit that officer more directly. So it's kind of funny. But, you know, she did something wrong. She did. She was trying to escape arrest and accelerated behaved in a manner that is reckless. Should that be a death sentence? Well, no, but hear me out, okay? Let's just say that your hobby is what is, sorry, I had the words on the tip of my mouth. What if your hobby is free climbing? Okay, free climbing is like when you go and you climb up a cliff, but you don't have any safety equipment. Solo free climbing, so there's not anybody there to save you if something goes wrong. If you make a mistake, you're dead, right? So let's say that next weekend you go solo free climbing, and as you're climbing, there's a rock that it seems stable enough at first, but then as you put your weight on it, it comes loose and falls, and then that you kind of lose your grip and you fall to your death. You're solo free climbing, you fall to your death. Okay. Am I going to then come and say, like, hey, this is the mountain's fault, we need to sue the mountain? Seems kind of silly. Now, the issue with this allegory here is that the mountain is not an actor, is not an agent, or rather, let's say, the mountain is not an agent. But I actually kind of think in these situations that you do kind of have to think of law enforcement not as the individual officers behaving or anything, but as part cogs in a larger system that has its own outlays, its own like percentage chances of things happening. So if you go and you try to flee from the police, there is a risk involved in doing that. There is a certain percentage chance that it could result in your death. And we can come and do the statistics. 1 in 2,000 or something like that people that try and flee from the police are killed in the process. Might actually be higher than that. Just like you could go and do the statistics, 1 in 2,000 attempts at free climbing, results in death. So, like, if you go solo free climbing and you die, of course, you're my friend. I'm going to be sad about it. And I'm going to say this is a tragedy, and we really wish that it hadn't happened or anything. But you were kind of free climbing, so, you do have to accept the consequences of the risks that you're taking. And that's one of the things about, and I think the reason that I come down on that, and the reason why I'm talking to you guys about it, is I think that that's something that would really resonate to us as traders, right? We are here, we are taking risk. There was a time where I got into the S&P 500 just kind of on a whim, and while I was in, the S&P 500 spiked 40 ticks, and I took a 40 tick loss on my stop, like 40 ticks of slippage on my stop, right? That shouldn't happen. It really shouldn't happen. It's really quite astounding that happened to me. But when we take a position, that is the risk that we are taking on, and we have to accept the consequences of those risks. And what I see is a bunch of people trying to claim that somebody that made a lot of reckless choices should be immune from the consequences of their choices. And I just don't agree. I just don't agree. She would probably have gotten a fine at worst. I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. So she was obstructing traffic, fleeing from an officer, reckless endangerment, assault with a deadly weapon. If the prosecutors, if federal prosecutors, fully pursued the charges against her, she probably would have gotten prison time, at the very least. I don't know, like, what the penalties associated with those or what the laws are and everything, but I don't think that she would have gotten off with a fine, actually. But you're right, she would be alive, like, if it had all gone differently. I mean, no, in that USA district, but it would be federal prosecutors, right? That's the other thing is, well, okay, maybe it wouldn't have turned into a national incident and nobody would have taken notice, and who knows what happens then. But let's just say that it still generated a lot of public interest, but that she survived. Let's say for the sake of argument that the officer, that everything happened exactly the way that it did, but the officer missed. Right? Okay, if that was the case, I bet you she'd be looking at jail time. I bet you she'd be looking at jail time. Those were actually pretty serious crimes that she was committing. I'm not saying that should be a death sentence, because that would mean anytime anybody does those things, that you should die from it. No, it shouldn't be a death, but that's a scarecrow. We're not saying that it's a death sentence. We're saying that there are risks associated with that behavior, and in that particular instance, she didn't. Those risks went against her. Yeah. But anyways, to the point, because we were talking about that. Okay, if I had the opportunity before all of that happened to maybe try and stop it or something like that, she's sitting in the middle of the road honking out for 3 minutes, and then I get a chance to talk at her, I would 100% go after her personal life. Have you heard this rumor? I haven't seen it confirmed anywhere, but I keep seeing it, this rumor that she actually has 3 kids, but that she only has custody of 1. Have you guys heard that? It really seems like I've seen it enough that it's probably true, but I really shouldn't be saying that it's true, because I really don't have the confirmed evidence that is true. But I guess I'm saying it seems like something that could be true. And I bet that if you started arguing with her about it and accusing her of things, of being a terrible mother, that it would probably really, really upset her. I bet you would probably really, really upset her. And I think that maybe you go and you take this conversation out of context, and I might seem really bad, mean, saying here's how you would verbally attack a person that died in a tragedy. But there's just like the perfect example of like, these are not people that have their shit together. They're not. If I was going to a protest and I was really serious about, I'm going to protest because I think that I have a message that needs to get out to the world, and that the best way for me to get that message out is to go and protest. Of course, I would never do anything that would damage people's property or put other people's safety at risk, like throwing firecrackers around, these sorts of things. Okay. But peaceful protest, sure. It's not something that I do anymore because I kind of think that it's pointless, and there's a lot of dangers associated with it now, so I'm not so sure that it's really worth going out and doing that. Okay. But if I was going to do that, I wouldn't like dress in all black and like hide my face or like, wear all this crazy shit that people wear at these protests. No, I would probably wear a nice shirt, maybe an even nicer shirt than this one. This one's okay. It's just striped. You can't really see the stripes and everything very well on the camera. It just kind of gets all washed out. Maybe if the lighting was a little lower, you could see the nice pattern in it. But I have some nicer shirts. Maybe I'd even go for the nicer shirt. What I would want to look the best possible. I would want to exude this guy has his stuff together. This guy knows what he's talking about. This guy is serious. And that's not what these people are doing. That's not what I see. What I see is some of the most degenerate losers out there whining because their life sucks and they think that it's the government's fault instead of their own bad decisions. I'm a coward. I'm not a coward. I'm just smart. I know what the risks are to things, and I don't take stupid risks. I could say I don't take stupid risks that aren't congruent with this situation. That's the other thing, is that all of these people that are going and protesting ICE and everything, in my opinion, pulling your car out into the middle of the road to block ICE officers is an individual act of insurrection, in my opinion. And I do not believe that this situation calls for insurrection. It just doesn't. These are individuals who have court order to be deported from the United States that have been convicted of crimes. And, it's just a matter of ICE finding them so that they can deport them. And I really don't think that it makes sense to be throwing up this like life or death fit to try and prevent these people from being deported. It absolutely makes zero sense. Absolutely makes zero sense. And why should you go and be brave and literally put your life at risk for that situation? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. It's like the whole thing doesn't make any sense. These people, they say this is the Gestapo, that Donald Trump is a fascist and this is the Gestapo, and they're going to go and genocide all these people, yada 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 yada. Okay, so you follow them around and taunt them all day? What? Like, if I can you imagine? Can you imagine being in 1920s, 30s Germany and following the Gestapo around and taunting them? Like, I wouldn't do that. That sounds like a stupid risk. That sounds like a stupid risk because the Gestapo would absolutely F you up, right? So if you guys really think that that's really what it is, shouldn't you be trying to stay as far away as possible? Makes no sense. The risks that people are taking is not in line with what they all claim is happening. This is such an awful thing. You should be staying as far away from it as possible. The only conclusion that I can make is that these people don't understand the risks that they're actually taking. I think that that's actually the case. Do you think that Tim Walz would go and put his car in the middle of the road and block ice, and then when the police told him to get out of the car, he would drive away? You think that Tim Walz would do that? I don't think that Tim Walz would do that. Why? Because he knows the risks associated with that, and he knows that it's a stupid risk to take, and he wouldn't do it. But you know what he also knows? He also knows that if he says the right things, he can convince other people that aren't as smart to take those risks for him. That's what I think. That's what I think. Pre-market consolidation probably means no big move today, huh? Well, you know, with the S&P 500, I wouldn't make too much of what it's doing right now because we're still only like 10 minutes after. So usually these guys don't get going until 9 o'clock, top of the hour. So 10 minutes afterwards doesn't really mean anything. And there's still a chance that after they sort out the opening thing that there could be a move higher or lower or whatever. But I don't have any kind of information about what the flows are going to be that would tell me that there's an opportunity there. We're not here to well, yes, we are, though. I mean, if you have an order flow question, I'll definitely stop and I'll answer that question. But like the honest truth is that you can't sit and watch some streamer and do what he does and become a master at the stock market and become rich from it. It just doesn't work that way. I have been doing this stream for a very, very long time, and I have a group of guys that are here every day. You know, a dozen, 2 dozen guys that are like here every day. And why do they come here every day? Do they do it because watching Seth has made them a millionaire? No. They do it because they like me. They enjoy hearing my perspective. They enjoy hearing the way that I approach different issues. And, you know, when we're talking about the news, there is some benefit to you as a trader, because it's kind of how can you analyze what are the best ways to analyze the world and analyze what's going on? Well, we've kind of talked about a couple of different things, haven't we? But so from my perspective, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, because the stream is really, it's my stream. So if I want to talk about the happening in Minnesota, I can. And you know what? If there's people that don't want to hear about that because they're left and they don't want to hear my far right opinion, I'm not gonna complain. I don't need to get on everybody's good side. I'm not going to water myself down in some attempt to try and widen the audience. That doesn't work. And indeed, I think that it's an important thing to tell people, because it seems like some people don't understand that fleeing from the police is a very dangerous thing to do. That revving your engine, that accelerating very, very quickly around police officers is a very, very dangerous thing to do, and that you shouldn't do it. And that you do have a lot of agency, that you can't just go and coast through high school and get B's and C's and then expect to be successful in life. That you can't expect to be an absolutely terrible parent and an absolute failure in every other aspect of your life, and then expect the rest of society to listen to you and do what you want when you express your political opinions. I've done my stuff. I'm 40 years old. I have 2 children of my own, 3 stepchildren. I've owned my own home. I've had a long, more than a decade career in computers. I feel like I've done really well about it. I have my shit together now. Well, I went through a period of unemployment because it's kind of unfortunate, but I've got a job now. You know, like, I have my shit together. I feel that I am in a place where I can talk about, you know, an opinion about how the world should be and so forth. Because I think that I have knowledge and experience that is valuable and can help people in, you know, understanding the world and maybe where we can make the world better. I'm not one of these crazy degenerate people that are out there complaining because their own life is empty. So I think I've earned the right to share my opinion. Common sense is not far right. Yeah. But isn't it so crazy that saying you shouldn't flee from the police, that's just common sense. But half of the internet is trying to tell me that it's not. Yeah, when Obama. So let me go back and just see if there's anything. They're narcissists who hate their parents by default. Yeah, we keep coming back to that, but I really think that you're correct. The left, the left has kind of been co-opted by 2 kind of influences. One influence is that communists, when the internet came along, immediately saw it as their opportunity to spread their ideology. It's the kind of, like, communism really is like mob rule. And they were kind of like, oh, hey, the mob is tops in the internet ecosystem. So this is the perfect way for us to try and push communism. And what you do is you get a small group of people that are highly engaged. And then you go and you manipulate social media. And you can make your ideas seem more popular than they really are. Because people are so prone to like selection bias. I saw this thing the other day. They were saying, well, you agree with this one lawyer that says that it's lawful, but you're ignoring all these other lawyers that say that it's unlawful. And it's like, well, but you're claiming that, like, more lawyers think it's unlawful than lawful. You don't know that. You don't have some poll. So you're doing your own selection bias. You're accusing them of selection bias and not seeing the selection bias in you. Or there's the anchoring bias. You hear the original story that was like that the police just randomly shot a woman. Didn't have all of the information, but you heard that first headline and got super, uppity about it. Now, it doesn't matter what comes out after that. Doesn't change people's opinion because of the anchoring bias. So the communists kind of learned ways to take advantage of this and created a far left that is straight up communist. Like in the United States during Kennedy's time, there was the left in everything, but you wouldn't call the far left communists per se. They would always be pulled just short of that. And now there is a percentage, one large enough to basically get in the mayorship, that straight up believe in socialism and even communism. They are there. That's the one force. And then the other force is millennials that when they were in high school had some moral axe to grind. They felt that gay people should be able to be married. That's probably the biggest one. They felt that gay people were being what is the word? Discriminated. That gay people were being discriminated against, right? Or their parents didn't like that they were having premarital sex with their boyfriend in high school. Or their parents wouldn't let them do this, or their parents wouldn't let them do that. And so it's like their entire life has kind of centered around this narcissistic wound that was inflicted on them in high school, and they never got over. And yeah, people that like hate their, like, millennials are far more likely than any other generation before them to cut their parents off and all of those sorts of things. Again, people that have pretty gaping holes in their lives, and then they turn around and they're trying to tell the rest of us the way that things should be, and all I can do is laugh. Like, no, I don't think you have a fucking clue what you're talking about. Yeah, hating your parents is insane. They are the only people on your team since day one. Like, well, let's not say that it's insane, because there certainly is going to be some situations where it's justified, right? Like if your parents are like chronic narcissists, or, you know, like there are some parents out there that are just bad parents. But the percentage of millennials that think that there are bad parents is just not, no, it's too high. This doesn't make any sense. It's not in line with the incidence of these particular problems. So I think, yeah, no, I think the problem is you and not your parents. You know? Like, if you hated your parents and then you went on to become successful in spite of them, then I would love to hear from you. And you know what? There are people on the left that have overcome great things and have accomplished great things in their lives, and that I think that we should talk to them and hear what they have to say. It just doesn't seem to me that those are the people protesting. Twitter, TikTok, etc. get teenagers to spiral down into doom loops. Yeah. But you know what else gets you to spiral down into doom loops? Is being a loser. It's kind of because I have friends from high school that or well, not even just high school, but from all periods of my life where things didn't work out for them, where they never really went anywhere. Most of us, because all my friends are nerds, right? Most of us have had successful careers and families and have done pretty well. There's always that one black sheep that went down a different path, you know? And, you know, it just kind of starts a few bad decisions and it snowballs, you know? And especially if you're in denial about it, you get down to the end of the rope and you want to say, well, why am I here? Well, it was because you didn't take school seriously. And then when you got a job, you made this poor decision that got you fired. And then when you got in this, you know, and it's just one thing after another, there is an explanation. I mean, it's possible. It does happen. Where people just are down on their luck, right? And in the United States, if that's really the case, what you do is you get back up, right? Like, you know, I went through a period of unemployment. In many respects, it was really kind of bad luck, but it wasn't completely luck, you know? When the company that laid me off, I knew that there was risks going over there that I could get laid off in that market scenario because I knew that, a possible high inflation was coming and that the car industry was one of the first places to get hit. So I took a risk there that I probably shouldn't have. And then when they decide to they're going to come after you because they need to do some payroll, but they don't want to do layoffs, they find ways. And are there things that you can do there to kind of stop and fight that? Yeah, sure. And there's mistakes, like really silly, trivial mistakes. Like, I didn't do any work on that Jira ticket today, so I didn't put comment on it. But that was a mistake, right? It's there. And what did I do? What did I do? Okay, there was that mistake and that mistake, and then I make more mistakes by spending my whole time just driving myself absolutely crazy and into the depths of depression, reading the internet all day? No. I got back up. I knew what my worth was. I knew that I was good at what I do. I knew what the market rates were. So even when I did a contract job, and at the end of the contract job, that company tried to lowball me, I said, nope, that's not what the market rate is. So you're either trying to take advantage of me, or you want something that's not really actually in line with like my skills and where my career is. So I have to say no. And I said no. It was probably one of the best things that I ever did. Right? You get yourself up. You keep going. You keep going. And what do people today do? What do most people do? Is it most people? I don't know what percentage of people do it, but what do? They say, I'm down on my luck. You know whose fault this is? The government. Or you know who can get me out of this? The government. I mean, it's kind of funny because in my situation, well, the biggest problem was that we were doing the tariffs and we were doing the government shutdown and interest rates are too high. So I had plenty of reason to complain about what the government was doing at the time. But that never at any point did I say that means that I don't have to do my thing. I don't need to try and keep my stuff together. It was hard. It was hard. Especially in the beginning. Now I'm like concerned, some people, in some situations you're married, and in a situation like that, the wife might just up and leave. And, I'm like super anxious about that sort of a thing. But I happen to marry the most secure and loyal person on the planet. So it was really kind of silly to ever think that I would, that she would do that. It's really quite silly. But, I had all sorts of fears and worries. And did I let those consume me? No, I just kept going for a year, for over a year. Really far and away was more than a year. It was 14 months. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I feel that I passed the test. It's interesting when I think about my own life. In some respects, I think that I've been very comfortable. There was, there was never a situation where I had to go live out in the street, right? That never happened to me. Can't imagine for those people. Like the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. Yes, that's what it is. The Pursuit of Happiness. Can't imagine being kicked out and having to live with your son, find a bathroom to set up camp in for that night. Oh, it's crazy. Never had to deal with that, of course. So in many respects, comfortable. But I really don't feel like anything came easy. I really don't. I'm a pretty smart guy. but that doesn't necessarily mean that school was easy for me. There were some kids, man. I remember there was this one kid. I guess I was thinking about it because we were at a funeral this weekend and somebody mentioned him. There was this one kid that just always got 100% on literally everything. And it seemed so effortless to him. I think he became a doctor. It just seemed so effortless to him. That was not for me. I got almost perfect grades, but I probably spent more time doing schoolwork than other kids did. It was hard. Every step was hard. Getting my degree, computer science, I'm super into it. I knew a lot about computers beforehand. It was still really, really hard work. They gave you a really hard workload. The amount of assignments and the difficulty of the assignments, and then you've got 3 other classes and everything. And I was there in the computer lab submitting the assignment just before the 12 midnight deadline all the time. And it wasn't because I didn't start working on it early enough or anything like that. I always was pretty good at starting the work and doing it when I needed to. But part of that was because I learned that you had to start immediately or you wouldn't finish it on time. It wasn't easy. And all of my jobs were not easy. And I experienced many setbacks along the way. There was never a time, and then I got divorced. That was hard. There was never a step. I feel like that my life has kind of been like, well, Seth, you have great ambitions. You really want to do something. You care more than other people about having an impact and doing something. And you have big ideas. In order to do the things that you want to do, you have to go through a lot. You have to struggle a lot to become the person that you need to. I think that's been my life. So thank goodness God said, well, we'll let you be comfortable the whole time, but it's not going to be easy. First thing to do when you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. Yeah. I wonder, so I had some friends that committed suicide, and there was a funeral for them on Saturday. And the last thing I remember from talking to them was that they didn't want to be involved in the church anymore, which, oh man, look at the S&P go there on the open. That's pretty good. I want to say like, oh, you leave the church, then you're gonna have problems. That's certainly not the case. I've seen lots of people that they leave the church and they're still successful, right? But these two, that like, not only did they leave the church, but like, kind of seemed to me that they were starting to experiment with substances and things like that. I don't really know what ultimately happened. Were they abusing substances or something? I was told though that when they went through their house, that their house was a real mess. Their house was really, really dirty. So like probably they were depressed for a really long time. Were they keep digging and digging and digging? Maybe they just dug the hole so deep that they were so disgusted with themselves that I can't possibly know. All I know is that it was like a really unfortunate thing that didn't need to happen. Like, I think with them, like the takeaway with them that I would tell people is that they, like their parents were shocked everybody was shocked that nobody had any clue that they were capable of that sort of a thing or that anything like that was on their mind. And why was it? Because they had basically cut themselves off from everybody. You're going to experience difficulties in your life, and you need to have connections. You need to have your support system so that when you do get laid off, you have people that can help. You know, you have a network that you can use to help you find a new job. You have family and friends that can help, you know, watch the kid while one of you works and one of you goes to an interview. If you completely isolate yourself from your support system, that just goes back to that, like, hating your parents is insane. Yeah, you know, cut yourself off from your support system. Okay. No Jigsaw today. No IQZ. I don't think that we're gonna have the data going on my personal system until tomorrow. But tomorrow, I think everything should go back to normal. I made a mistake. It was time to put more money in the account because it draws down from the data fees. And I should have taken care of it in December, and it didn't. Then because of that, we have, you know, when you do the deposit, you have to wait 5 days and everything. It hasn't been 5 days yet. That's why this is actually not my machine. This is actually a virtual machine in the cloud, co-located. Yeah, that hour, I feel like that went by pretty quickly, but I was monologuing super a ton there. I guess earlier I was saying, oh, I want to talk about it if Uzi's not here, but I think he popped in the beginning, and he might have had to go and do some other stuff. I was wondering because there was two things. We were like analyzing the video the other day, and I saw two things in the video that I didn't hear anybody else on the internet really talk about. And it seems relevant to me. Maybe it's not. Maybe people just aren't talking about it because it's not relevant. But so here's two things I saw in the video yesterday that I thought were curious. The first was, as I kind of alluded to, she hits the gas, and when she does, the wheel is actually maybe turned slightly to the left, and then as she hits the gas, she turns it to the right. And as all of that is happening, the wheels are slipping because it's icy. So if it was summer, would she have hit that officer more directly? And who knows, in that situation, if she had hit the officer more directly, maybe she would have run him over. It kind of makes you wonder. Maybe that officer was way more lucky than we think. I don't think that she was trying to hit him, but given the situation, I'm not a mind reader. I don't actually know what she was thinking. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I think if it wasn't icy, she would have really hit him. Like hit him hard. Like he'd probably have a bruise at the very least. Do you typically adjust your target take profit on ZN, or do you always go for a fixed? No, I never go for a fixed take profit by default. Yeah, so let's change subjects here, because this is one of these axes that I have to grind. Okay, if you go in and you say I am going to take profit if it goes +4, and I am going to put my stop loss at -4, so I have equal risk reward or whatever the deal is, right? That very act alone has such a significant impact on the performance of the system that it basically overshadows everything else. It basically overshadows everything else. And so what you're essentially doing is putting the results of your strategy at the mercy of market volatility, which will tend to, on average, bring you to break even. So if you have equal risk reward, then you're going to win 45% of the time because you have to consider the spread. And you know, you'll lose money overall on a long enough time frame. That's just what happens if you have those set stops and targets. So and I'm kind of making this determination based on the back testing. When you go and you do the back testing, having the set stop and target just dominates your results so much that, like, if I have a signal and I say, okay, when I see a strong volume impulse like this, does it tend to predict that we're going to move up or not? And if I do the back test and I have set take profits and stops in there, then I won't learn anything. All of the data will just look random. So the better thing to do, if you want to say, okay, is this actually predictive of the flows over a certain time frame? Like over the next 30 minutes, is this predictive of the flows? You have to set an exit based on time. So you say, when I see that signal, I'm going to get in, and then I stay for 30 minutes. I'm not saying that you should do that with your live trading, but in your back tests to collect the data, that's what you actually want. Because then you can come in and you can say, okay, what is is it actually predictive of a move? And like, how strong of a move? What's the most that it's ever gone during that period? And and then you can look at the MFE and MAE and all of those sorts of things and do all of the statistics, right? So when you're doing your back testing, having set stops and targets kind of prevents you from being able to collect all of the information that you need to find a real edge. Isn't that interesting? So then why would you use set stops and targets in your live trading? So I do not do that at all. I will have a stop. It's usually a mental stop that is just should never be hit. Should literally, like, the only time that should ever be hit is that there was some sort of freak news that just completely changed the market and was like, like that 3 sigma move fat tail, right? So I'm going to have a stop that's maybe like in the treasury, like maybe 8 to 10 ticks away. I don't always put it on there because I don't want people to see it, because I'm afraid that if people see stops that they'll start gaming it and everything. But 8 to 10 ticks away, something like that. That's something that should never get hit, right? And I'm usually actually getting out at like maybe -2 or 3, because I get in, and then if the flows aren't going my way, if I'm not continue to see cumulative delta moving, I go long and I'm not seeing cumulative delta moving up, because my prediction is that we should see more orders behind me buying. If I don't see that, I get out immediately, right? And when do I get out? I'm looking for these nodes. Usually this right here. I can't draw on it, unfortunately. But you see where it's like price just we moved up. So maybe if I had taken a long today, maybe I would have gotten in here saying, oh, we're going to see cumulative delta move up. And then when I got to here and we started seeing this, little area of low latent liquidity. And then especially when you see that they tried to smash it out and it got stuck back into it. Yeah, I get out right there. Or I say, okay, I got in because I'm expecting to see buying coming in after me. I have an estimate of how much buying I'm going to see come after me. So I'm going to wait for a net change of 10,000 in cumulative delta, or a net change of 15,000 in cumulative delta. And especially if I can get the 2 of those things together, and then I'm going to take profit. So basically, What I'm saying is I want to predict future orders. I have a very specific prediction of like future orders coming in within a certain time frame. And if anything about my prediction is failing, I get out. And otherwise, I stay in until I hit the magic numbers. And so it's not based on a set take profit or stop. And then when you go and you look at my results and you look at things like the MFE and the MAE and the largest winner and the largest loser, it's not like you don't go and see every winner is 4 ticks and every loser is 4 ticks. Instead, what I would like to see is like every loser is 3 ticks and every winner is like 6 ticks or more. Because it's really, if you have, especially on the target side, if you have a set take profit, basically what you're doing is you're taking that fat tail and you want the far right tail and you're just cutting it off. You never, how can you possibly be successful in that situation? Doesn't make any sense. No, cumulative delta is a really common indicator. So that's what we have right here, this order flow cumulative delta. And that is an indicator that comes with NinjaTrader that you can use if you have a full license. If you don't have a full license, though, there are free versions of cumulative delta that do literally exactly the same thing. So pretty much every major platform out there is going to have cumulative delta available. Yeah. But the gist of it is you want to have, you know, a distribution. You want some winners that are really, really big and some winners that aren't. And that's just, you know, you need to set a system up so that those things are possible. And if you don't, if you just have these super tiny set targets, then the only way that you're going to make money in that situation is if your signal is really, really effective and immediate. And as a retail trader, I don't think it's really very practical to find a signal like that has that much edge. It's unlikely that an edge that big could still exist in the market. It would just be this gaping hole. There's no way that somebody wouldn't have noticed it. You know, when it's like a tick, I could make sense. It's a tick and you have high frequency, you know, you have good latency, you're doing high frequency trading. That could totally work, right? But like, you know, you're going to be able to make 4 ticks. You have equal risk reward and you're going to make it like you're going to win 55 or 60% of the time. That's actually like a really huge edge that I'm not sure it's practical to exist anymore. Ergo, set stops and targets makes 0 sense. I mean, it's kind of because that's harder, right? It's harder. You got to find like some sort of an exit and things like that. But that's just what the data in my experience suggests is the case. Just reading, popping around to see Laura kind of had prompted the things that we were talking about and refreshing, and I was just seeing a bunch of stories complaining about Donald Trump wants to take over Greenland. I think if Donald Trump secures Greenland for the United States before the end of his term, that'll just be the most hilarious thing ever. That'd be so funny if he pulls that off. Because it just seems so silly. Just seems so silly to me. I guess maybe because we've never seen a territorial acquisition before. It's so rare and still. It'd make the EU look impotent? Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, like, if Denmark makes a deal and says, okay, we'll give you Greenland if you give us this and yada, 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 would that make them look impotent? I don't think so. Because here's the deal. It really does need to go to the United States. Like, from a global strategic perspective, it is 100% very much so in the interest of Europe for the United States to have it. Okay. If Trump did it unilaterally and succeeded, would it make the EU look impotent? Yeah, I mean that would certainly be the perception. But I mean, like, in reality, if the United States wants to take something like that, nobody can do anything about it. Man, did you guys read this story about the Venezuela operation? Let me read you this. This account is from a Venezuelan security guard loyal to Nicolas Maduro, and it is absolutely chilling. It explains a lot about why the tone across Latin America suddenly changed. Says the security guard, on the day of the operation, we didn't hear anything coming. We were on guard, but suddenly all our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones flying over our positions, and we didn't know how to react. After those drones appeared, some helicopters arrived, but they were very few, I think barely 8 helicopters. And from those helicopters, soldiers came down, but a very small number, maybe 20 men. But those men were technologically very advanced. They didn't look like anything we had fought against before. And the interview asks, and then the battle began? Security guard, yes, but it was a massacre. We were hundreds, but we had no chance. They were shooting with such precision and speed, it seemed like each soldier was firing 300 rounds a minute. We couldn't do anything. And your own weapons, they didn't help? No, not at all, because it wasn't just the weapons. At one point, they launched something. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. And your comrades, did they manage to resist? No, not at all. These 20 men, without a single casualty, killed hundreds of us. We had no way to compete with their technology, with their weapons. I swear, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after that sonic weapon or whatever it was. Without a doubt, I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight the United States. They have no idea what they are capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They are not to be messed with. This is something that we used to talk about on this channel a lot. You remember the Havana syndrome? And it was like, what's going on? There's this weird thing. And then they came along and it was like, actually, we think that it's a microwave device. And then the State Department came back along later and was like, no, that wasn't the thing. And then you would get like some stories from the Washington Post that are like, no, that whole thing was actually just like an internet hoax. And here's how it all turned into, no. You know what really happened? I think that it was a microwave device. I think that the Russians were testing a microwave device on members of the U.S. State Department. And then the United States kind of put the kibosh on it, said, oh, that's not what it is, because they either decided, took that technology to make their own device or already had their own device in development. It's a microwave device. It's sounds that is perfectly like a directed energy microwave device. It causes you to, like, it seems like a sound wave, but you can't really describe it, and it causes you to start bleeding. That's what would happen if you put your head in a microwave. Crazy, crazy stuff, isn't it? Does the EU have that device? Maybe the EU has it. But you know what? I bet you that whatever kind of military that they have over there in Greenland doesn't have that. It's probably something that you only give to your very top, special forces. I found a fun little patent recently looking for something contracted with the U.S. government for government use. First time I've seen something with those legal words, and it was for a simple, cool way of turning a rifle into an EMP rifle generator. Whoa, yeah. And I find maybe part of the reason why I find this interesting is because I remember reading this book where these guys, the premise of the book was these guys found some sort of spectrum where they were like, here's the light spectrum and here's the sound spectrum, but they're connected, and there's actually like energy in between those two, and when you use the energy in between those two, it can kill people. But not only that, but that they were able to change the frequency to kill people even based on things like race. So that you could give people this gun that would, because in the book they were like, the US had been taken over by the Chinese or something like that. So you could come in and you could give everybody that device. And you didn't have to worry about them misusing or like friendly fire or anything like that, because it could only kill the enemy. And obviously there's some things about that were fantastical and would never work or anything, but it does seem that the government has found a way to direct microwaves in a way that is so targeted and directed that it can be practical as a weapon. Basically like an LRAD, like a personal LRAD is really what it is. Isn't that wild? Now on the same token, you kind of have to wonder, I don't think that another country would be able to get into United States Air Force, but if another country decided to do a targeted operation against the United States, could they get away with it? Maybe that's something we see in our lifetime, like the weaponry is getting advanced. Remember the sonic weapon that was used at the peaceful protest at that one country where it was illegal? Yeah, it's an LRAD. Yeah, the only reason I can remember the name of it is because there was this really great knife party song called LRAD. Long Range Acoustic Device is a brand of advanced directional loudspeakers used globally by military, law enforcement, and emergency services. So basically, the way that it works is they have found a way to focus the sound waves into a really narrow beam so that you'll hear them speaking or whatever it is, but only the person in that very, very focused beam will be able to hear it. Right? And at first it was just like, oh, we can hit protesters with it and it hurts and, they'll run away. And it's effective at breaking up protests, right? But I think that what has happened without us kind of realizing it, is that they just continued to naturally develop the technology. So what are some of the things that you can do with this technology now? Well, one thing that you could do is you could focus that beam at somebody and make them hear voices. And there has been stories of people in the military hearing voices. It's like, you know, voices claiming that they're God and telling them to do things that they know that they shouldn't. Happens. Government could use a directed sound device to make you hear things, and you would hear it and the person next to you wouldn't. That's what the technology is capable of doing. And then what did they do? I think that then what they did after that is they took the same technology that allowed them to focus a sound wave, and they used it to focus a radio wave, essentially, a microwave, so that now you can do that. You can microwave somebody's brain, and you do a certain frequency that will hit certain parts of them, so that maybe it will hurt them, but it won't necessarily kill them. And then you go and you use it, and all of the soldiers start bleeding from the nose. Ooh, it's like super scary to think about being on the other side of that, isn't it? Seems like a weapon. Ooh. Like, do you realize what's happening? The United States has a weapon that basically, if you don't have that weapon, you are completely obsolete. So we have possibly made a technological weapon that gives you such an advantage in a way that it hasn't happened since a rifling on guns was added. Right, like in the Civil War, just before the Civil War, they added rifling so that, you know, that's what makes a bullet spin when it comes out. There's grooves in the gun, and it makes the bullet spin. And that spin makes the bullet trajectory more stable so that your shots are more accurate. And because of that, the Civil War ended up being an extremely, extremely deadly war, because nobody really knew how to deal with such increased accuracy in their weapons. And that's why the death toll in the Civil War ended up being so high. Until they got to the end of it and they kind of started to figure out that, like, well, in this situation, just lining up in the field and everything isn't a good idea. Right? Yeah. I think because there was certainly some big developments in World War I and World War II, but I don't know if they were as that game changing of a thing. That it's basically like anybody that doesn't have it, you might as well be like, savages. It's just not. You just don't stand a chance. Back in 1975, during the church committee hearings, it was disclosed that we had a heart attack gun for targeted assassinations. Yeah. You know what's something that this is the last thing, and then I gotta go. Okay. Some of the things that Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have been saying, not that I follow them, but like it's people that I do follow will talk about them and are complaining about them. And they are really saying some of the craziest things, particularly as it pertains to the Charlie Kirk thing. This whole idea that if Israel wanted to kill somebody, that they would somehow brainwash some transgender furry into doing it is just the most ridiculous thing I can possibly fathom. They have so many ways to quote unquote kill somebody that would seem completely innocuous. It would be more suspicious that somebody fell sick and died, or somebody that's healthy, all of a sudden they're having a heart attack or something like that, because they have for decades now had methods of assassination that are nearly undetectable. Like these situations where they can just give you a radioactive isotope and it'll kill you. And then by the time the doctors look, the radiation isn't there anymore. And it was just kind of a lucky that we were able to figure out how that worked and detect it now. You know, like and how many different ways that they have of doing that, right? If Mossad wanted to assassinate somebody, none of us would be guessing that it was them. We would all think that they just died of natural causes. And by the way, there have been people that have died in circumstances that I think are a little suspicious. Like there was this journalist, and he was about to put something out, and then he got in a deadly car crash. And you know what? They have technology where they can shoot electromagnetic waves at a chip in a way that will like completely break the chip or even cause the chip to do what you want it to do, that could disable a car and cause a car crash like that. Talking about shiny rocks that kill people, imagine how many people got irradiated back in the day with certain things and gifts from miners, etc. And the numbers have to be high. Yeah. That reminds me of one of the things that Russia did was they had like they invited diplomats over for a meeting, and the hallway that they had them wait in had X-ray lights, and so they died from X-ray exposure. That's got to be like the most awful way to die, by the way. My gosh. Should we have tinfoil on our heads? Well, that's the funny thing is that based on the way that it works, I think that the way that you protect against it is you have to have foil in your helmet. I bet you that there are soldiers out there now that they're you wouldn't just use tinfoil, but basically they turn the helmet into a Faraday cage. Going to be a thing in the future. 100%. We're already there. We're already there. All my clothes are made from Faraday cloth. There you go. Yeah. So you need electromagnetic shielding on everything. But if I was a millionaire and I was like building a new house, I think that I would have like chicken wire in the walls in certain parts of the house. You know, like have one room that's like my skiff so that I can go and talk. Not that I would have any use for something like that. I just think that would be cool to have, you know. And then in my server room, I would definitely have that. Not because I have anything on my machines that's like ultra sensitive and could possibly, you know, be a disaster if somebody hacked it or destroyed it or anything like that. But that, you know, if there is an EMP doomsday where, you know, they destroy all electronics in the United States or something like that, but my server will still work because I had the electromagnetic shielding on it. Yes. Man, we live in wild times. Directed microwave guns, artificial intelligence. It's really crazy, some of the things that we're inventing. It's not necessarily what we expected that we would be doing, but it wasn't completely unpredicted. It would only work if you had good separation from the electro. Okay, good. I will keep that in mind. And make sure that I have like really good UPS that like shield protects it and everything, right? Anyways, the S&P 500 rally there wasn't too bad. I mean, that was like 40 points, wasn't it? That's pretty good. I'm wondering, in fact, well, I didn't miss anything, did I? Speculators are positioning for a fiscally dominant world. UK, Germany, France push new plan to appease Trump on Greenland. Well, okay, so if they did like some sort of joint plan where they all did, maybe that would work. We'll see. I do think something, I tell you what, I know that it sounds crazy, but something will happen on Greenland. Like when you look at the strategic significance of it, just where it is in relation to Russia and China, and then you add the rare earth minerals on top of it and things like that, the strategic importance of it is so high that it is just inevitable that something's going to be done there where the United States needs to have more strategic assets in Greenland. And so if it being owned by Denmark, you know, makes that too hard, we have to do a deal every time that we want to put something over there. That's not a sustainable situation. But if they made some sort of a deal where, you know, the United States doesn't own it, but they're still able to do everything that they want, maybe that could work. All right, it's time for me to get going. I'll see you guys